Okay, let's call this meeting to order of the Board of Zoning Appeals for Clayton, Ohio. It's Tuesday, September 21st, 2021 at 7 p.m. Let's do the roll call first.
Okay, Ms. Weeks?
Here.
Mr. McGinnis?
Here.
Mr. Goit?
Here.
Ms. Hunter?
Here.
And Ms. Byers?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to quickly explain the meeting procedures. And the first on the list is to administer an oath. If there's anybody who will be speaking this evening, you need to stand up, raise your right hand, and just say that you'll do, it's a quasi-judicial body here, so we have to do an oath. So yeah, anybody who wanting to stand to speak tonight, please stand. Raise your right hand.
That would be anybody that wants to speak either for, against, or may be talking during any of our cases that we have.
Yes.
Don't forget to push the button, Bob.
I got a loud voice.
Okay. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you are about to give this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please say I do. Okay, thank you. Okay, so like I said, I'll quickly kind of go through all the procedures of how the meeting will go tonight, so you all can quickly see that. So we did the oath, and then I will go through our agenda items, and as we go through each agenda item, we'll ask staff to present the case. Then I will ask the applicant if they would like to add anything that staff has presented. And then I will ask the board members if there are any questions for staff or the applicant. And then at that time, we'll ask for a motion to open the floor to public comments. And at that time, anybody for or against the application can come up and give your comments. And I will let you know. So each speaker will have 3 minutes to make comments. If your comment has been made by a previous speaker, please do not replicate comments. Direct your comment to the Board of Zoning Appeals and not directly to the applicant. The applicant will have a chance to respond to the comments received at the end. And then once the floor has been closed to public comment, no additional comments can be made. The chair, and then we'll also ask for anybody in favor or against, and that's all that, the public comments on that. And then we'll ask for staff ask staff if any comments were provided prior to the meeting. Then we'll ask for a motion to close the floor to public comments. At that time, we'll ask the applicant if they would like to have any other comments or rebut anything that the public has commented on. And then we'll see if there's any further discussion among board members at that point. And then we'll go through all the findings of fact for the variances. And then at that point, we'll ask for a motion to approve with conditions, or disapprove the applicant's request. And that should be about it. Okay. So I'll start going down our agenda here for tonight. The next item on our agenda is the minutes from the previous meeting, to approve all of those. Anybody have any comments, changes to the minutes that were provided from the June 15th, 2021 meeting? Okay, I didn't have anything. Okay, do we have a motion?
I move to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
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 Okay, the minutes from the June 15th have been approved. Okay, we have no old business, so we're going to move on to our new business. So we have 3 cases tonight. The first is case number VAR 21-03. It's at 7140 Crestway Drive. The applicant is Ann Smith. The request for accessory structure variances at 7140 Crestway Drive. The applicant is proposing to construct a horse riding arena which requires variances for height, size, and total number of accessory structures on the property. The request was made by Ann Smith, the property owner. And I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Chair Weeks. Good evening, board members. I'd like to introduce the application. As Ms. Weeks said, the applicant is proposing to build a 24,000 square foot riding arena on a 23-acre parcel overall. The applicant owns close to 40 acres in between Crestway Drive and Kimmel. The detached accessory structure variances, again, as Ms. Weeks stated, are required for height, number of accessory structures on a single lot, and size of structure. Next slide. So this is the surrounding area. Again, Ms. Smith's property goes along Kimmel or Crestway from Kimmel to the east. Next slide. And this is a close-up view of the area where the riding arena is proposed. There's the existing house and some of the accessory structures to the north. Kind of in that angled tree line area is where the riding arena will be placed. Next slide. And that shows a plot plan based on the dimensions I received and the information I received from the applicant. Put a little plan together showing the setbacks from the southern neighbor. The closest corner would be approximately 55 feet, and the furthest corner about 105 feet from that north property line of the neighbor to the south. Next slide. So again, the area of the arena is 24,000 square feet. The code maximum size for a detached accessory structure is 1,800 square feet. The height proposed is around 30 feet. The code maximum height for a detached accessory structure, the code says that it needs to be less than the height of the principal structure. This would be more than. And then this would be the fourth detached accessory structure on the 23-acre parcel. Code restriction is for no more than 2 detached accessory structures on a single lot. And then after review and consideration of the application and considering the code, staff recommends approval of the proposed riding arena given the following facts. The proposed structure will be located on the applicant's 23-acre parcel, and in total the applicant does own nearly 40 acres around the proposed structure. The proposed structure appears to meet the rear yard setback for a principal structure in the RCD2, which is a Rural Conservation District 2 zoning district. The code required rear yard setback for detached accessory structures is 20 feet. The proposed structure, as I mentioned, will be approximately 55 feet at the closest point from the rear yard. And then the proposed structure will be located approximately 250 feet from the existing primary residence. So I feel that the larger height of the riding arena should not seem out of scale from the residence, and also given the area of the property. And that's all I have for you tonight.
Okay, thanks. Are there any questions from the board for staff at this point?
I have one question, Seth. I don't know if this goes into your into the documents that you file, but in 1, 2, 3 paragraph of the introduction there, you talk about the reference to section 111.19.
Mm-hmm.
It should be F, I think. It should be F. It's a nit, but, just to be accurate.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, I made note of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question for Seth. I know we referenced that Ms. Smith has multiple lots that total about 40 acres. We would still have the same issue if this was a single lot that totaled 40 acres, correct? So I mean, the fact that she has multiple lots totaling 40 acres is really kind of a misnomer. Maybe not misnomer is not the correct word, but regardless, we would still be here for this variance regardless of the lot size.
That's correct.
Okay. But given that she's got the 40 acres, you and staff do not see the issue here, and frankly, I don't either, but thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, would the applicant like to come up and give any additional information to the board? Just state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Name is Ann Smith, address 7140 Crestway Road, Clayton, Ohio, 45315. The only thing I really have to add is that this strictly is a riding arena for me. You know, the Ohio weather doesn't really allow, you know, constant 24/7, you know, 65 days a year riding. And I have a couple horses, one that is in rehab right now, and it has to be ridden daily. And this arena would just allow me to do that safely, basically. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any questions from the board?
I have a couple questions for you, Ms. Smith, if you don't mind. So first off, thank you for the map. I don't know if that's you or Seth providing that, but that did help out quite a bit. Where the structure is being proposed to being built on my map is number 7, kind of at that angle of the tree line. Given the fact that it is so set far back, I mean, are we really going to see this property or this structure from the street?
You won't see it. You don't see the house, you don't see any of the other barns, anything I have back there, you don't see any of that. Just because the way the driveway curves and comes up in, even like the neighbors behind me, and I went and specifically talked to him before I turned in the paperwork, that where I wanted to put it, and that I would have to trim the trees along the fence line, and if I had a pointer I could show you, but the fence line is here, the existing fence, and these trees would have to be trimmed to allow that building to be built. But I plan on leaving the trees, just trimming them back enough that we can get equipment in there to do that. Because we actually have a trail that runs between the fence and the tree line. We ride our horses through that trail back in there, so.
And I'm assuming since you spoke with your neighbor that he didn't mind, does not mind?
I asked him to write a letter. I don't know, he didn't tell me he minded at all. And it would affect him more than anybody else. The other structure it would affect would be, this house here, 67, I think it's 95, yeah, 6795. And that is my rental property, so they would see it, but.
Did you talk to the tenants, make sure they were fine with it too?
It's my nephew's dad.
Oh,
so.
nobody cares then.
And my nephew has horses, so I don't think
Okay.
he cares.
All right, great. So I do appreciate the fact that you've proactively reached out to your neighbors and got their opinion. That's always nice to see that people are being considerate of others. Just one kind of question. It's not, so you're using this to condition and rehab horses.
Correct.
So what are you doing now to fulfill that need?
Well, right now, I'm riding around the back property as long as it's not too wet and muddy. And I ride along the driveway, and sometimes I go up Kimmel, because the horse I have has to be ridden for 30 minutes. And last winter, I actually had to take her to a rehab place because they couldn't do that with the snow and ice that we had. I also, you can't see it on that, but up in the other, I have a small outdoor arena, about 100 by 60. But again, that gets icy with the snow and stuff. And I ride her some in there, but she just needs really flat, smooth surface. We do some mounted shooting that's like blanks, and I would probably be doing that in there, but I won't, we don't do that at night, so.
So utilizing the other location for the rehab and riding other horses, how difficult is it for you to utilize that space? Like to transport your horse to the other facility that you're using now, not your 100 square foot
Oh,
one?
it's part of the property. If you go to the other page where it shows more of my property, I can show you. So the grayish building, the light gray, is my horse barn, and then to the left of that is the existing riding arena.
Perfect, thank you. I think that's all I have.
I have another question for
Sure.
you, ma'am. How tall is your house?
It's kind of hard to judge because it has, I don't think you can see it. Is there, close-up of the house on there? No. It has, like, from what I could tell, it was close to 25 to 28 feet. But like in the center of it, there's peaks on it. So I can't really measure those because there's no way to get close enough to drop the tape down or measure up. So I guesstimated it maybe 26, 27 feet, somewhere in there.
Okay, I just wanted to get a feel,
Yeah.
since, you know, the size of your structure is 35 feet at the highest.
Right.
And that's part of what we're gonna be, you know, deciding on, so I kinda wanted to get a feel.
It's got to be close, and it might be 30 feet, but I thought while I'm doing the rest of the variances, you know, might as well throw that one in. So,
Get the paper set for resale.
That's right.
There you go. I like that. I had another question for you then. You know, this is a couple of outbuildings we're talking about. How many outbuildings do you have total?
so I have a horse barn, I have a shop that's like to work on equipment and stuff, welding and stuff like that, which I like to play with. Nothing's commercial, it's all just toy stuff. And then I have an equipment barn. And then there's a small run-in here. That little square is like a run-in shed, so it's a three-sided with a roof for the horses if they're, you know, down in that other arena that they can get out of the weather. So I guess that's it. So,
Okay, so four, so we're talking about a fifth. But,
Right.
you know, again, this is an area that's rural, it's rural conservation.
mhm.
You know, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, okay, you know, if this was in the middle of a, you know, residential area.
Right,
Where you had neighbors on top of you, then adding, you know, maybe a fifth building there might be a little problematic. But,
right.
you know, in the area where you're at, okay. I just wanted to get a clarification. for
Yeah,
that.
nobody really sees. I mean, I've had people come and work on stuff at the house, and they're like, we never knew this was back here. And I'm like, good.
Yeah, that is the point. isn't
That's
it?
right.
And, you know, and again, you know, I think about that too, and I say, well, you know, in your area on 40 acres, considering that there's probably an awful lot of properties with more than two, you know, outbuildings,
Mhm.
again, that's, you know, nothing that I don't think we're gonna be sitting there getting all tied up in a knot over, but I wanted to just clarify that.
Sure.
Since it was in your application.
Absolutely.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yep.
I have a question.
Sure.
When did you purchase the property? And when you did you have any inkling that you would one day be building an indoor riding arena?
I purchased it in '09, I believe. I think like April or somewhere like that from the Embassies. And I knew we wanted horses. It was already set up for horses. I had no clue I wanted a riding arena.
Any other questions or comments from the board for the applicant or staff? Okay. Do we have a motion to open this for public comments?
I'll move to open for public comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, everyone in agreement to, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, if there's anybody in the public who would like to come forward and for or against this application, please come on up and state your name and your address.
Hello, my name is Jane Kraushaar, and my husband and I, Bill, are here in support of Ann. We live directly across the street from her at 7139 Crestway, which I prefer drive, but it has now become a road for some reason. We've lived there 40 years, and if Ann and the people that live there did not stop at the end of their driveway to speak with us, we would never see these people. You cannot see, even in the dead of winter, you cannot see their house. You don't know they have a house, or they have a horse barn, or they have a pond. I've been up there twice. We had a missing dog, and I think a duck came down or a goose flew down from their place. But my husband has never been up there. You cannot see it. It's a beautiful place. And we have absolutely no qualms about them doing this, whatever it takes to keep people in the neighborhood. And we're very happy with that they have this land and that they use it. We do see the horses sometimes come down, and then on the creek, sometimes we'll have issues with beavers. But we are fully supportive of this and hope that you do pass it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the comment. Any others? Seth, did we get anything outside comments that came in on this one?
I did receive back a letter from a property owner that, that's within 300 feet with a note, no objection. So just to let you know that.
Okay, good to know. Thanks. Okay. Anybody else? We good? Okay, do I hear a motion to close the floor to public comments?
Motion to close?
I'll second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, so we're closed for public comment. At this time, does the applicant have anything else to say on comments? Okay. Let's see. And then any other discussion from the board members?
The only comment or discussion point I have is, given the fact that we're looking at such a large parcel and it's sitting so far back from the road and site, I don't see that there is any real issues here with the size requirements here on this arena. I really don't. I mean, I think we would be talking differently if this was up closer to the road or in a more residential type atmosphere, but, you know, driving in the area and things like that, I mean, yeah, I don't think that the size restriction should really be a huge factor in this case.
Okay, I would agree on that.
I would agree on that too. And the other thing that I would say is you know, during the discussion here, you know, we talked about the height of the building. The building itself is not to exceed, you know, the height of the primary structure. But based on Ms. Smith's testimony, and because again, of the distance from the road, I don't see that as being a particular issue. The other item that we have here is the number of accessory structures. Standards that apply to this area talk about the number of up to 2 accessory structures are permitted on a single lot. However, again, since this is rural conservation and the primary usage in this past has been agriculture, there's an awful lot of properties out there, I'm sure, that have more than 2 structures associated with their property. So again, I think it's consistent with the land use, and I know that under the analysis of request, staff has gone ahead and put in code restrictions on accessory structures geared toward limiting the number of types of structures and more traditional subdivision plats, et cetera. And I think that's a good argument and a good validation and reason for us not to get too bent out of shape about that particular point that we're going to be voting on as well.
Okay. There's no other comments at this time. Let's go through the finding of facts. So we'll just go through some questions really quickly. And so this is determining whether a property owner seeking an area variance has encountered practical difficulties. The board shall consider and weigh all of the following factors, provided, however, that the applicant need not satisfy all of the factors, and no single factor will be determined. We'll determine how this goes. So we'll go one by one, and if anybody has a...
Let me just apologize in advance. This is the first time we're going through all these particular verifications that we're going through. So there may be some questions on the absolute wording of it. So there may be some discussion on this particular case, more about the wording rather than what our intent's going to be. But I just wanted to let you know this isn't what we normally do. So.
Yeah, these are updated finding of facts, so these might be a little new for us. So, Okay, so we'll start with number one. The property in question will yield a reasonable return, or whether there can be any beneficial use of the property without a variance. Somebody have comments on, agree or disagree with that?
Well, I think the property shows that there's beneficial use of the property without the variance because she's able to utilize it and benefit from it now. However, granting the variance does not limit the benefit. If anything, it increases it, and I could see if, down the years when she goes to sell it, be more advantageous to somebody. So, providing the variance could possibly provide increased benefit and increased yield.
Okay. So we agree on this one, and I did make a note that, it would be, there could be a benefit, but it would be, there wouldn't necessarily be any more, but kind of what Zach has said, as far as they're, not in the way the applicant would like to use the property, as far as they're without the writing area, so.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. All right, number two, the variance is substantial. Yes, this is very subjective, so the variance is substantial. I would say that it is in this case because it's quite a bit away from, you're talking a 24,000 square foot variance with I think the minimum
Yeah,
size is, or the maximum is supposed to be 1,800, right?
I kind of stumbled over this too a little bit. Maybe staff can lend some clarification to the word substantial.
I think Ms. Weeks hit the nail on the head. I think this is a substantial variance with respect to the size of the structure. Yet we're looking at several variances, a couple of which may not be quite as substantial. But I think overall, I think you could look at it as a substantial. And again, there's no magic number of what makes it substantial. I think it depends on the board and your feeling on each case that you review, whether or not it's substantial. But I think you could argue that it is in this case.
Okay, so the way I'll look at this then is, rather than look at it from a pure engineering standpoint, and being technically, it's within 3 square meters of an acre or something like that, that wouldn't be substantial. To me, that would be pretty minuscule. So you're talking about the impact, if you will, of what's being proposed here.
Correct.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
I was just going to take one step further from Seth's comment, is that substantial is inherently a subjective terminology that we're going to use. So, Seth, was 100% right. There is no magic formula that's going to establish substantiality. I kind of disagree with you guys. I don't think there's a substantial variance here when we're looking at it all. I would say no, just given the totality of the circumstances that we're talking about. In essence, a 40-acre parcel of land that Ms. Smith owns, and when we're talking about the arena and things like that, yeah, considering it's 1,800 square feet compared to the 24,000 that she wants, if we're looking solely at that, that's substantial. But as a whole, I don't see this as substantially impacting the property or substantially impacting anything like that. So my inclination is that the variances that she's requesting in this situation subjectively is no, but that's just nuances.
Okay. Seth, do we have to all agree or disagree on these, or can we have opposing views, or how
I think
should
if
we?
you guys could come to a consensus on those, but I don't know that you would have to agree as a group to all of them to approve a variance, if that helps.
I would consider this variance substantial But in the factors related to this particular case, the fact that it's a substantial variance really isn't that important to the outcome of the case.
That I would agree with, yes. That's where it's kind of with on it. Okay, yep. Okay, so I think for now, we'll just, it seems like the majority is in agreement that it is substantial, but it may not necessarily hold any weight that it's substantial when it comes to our decision. Okay. Okay, number 3, the essential character of the neighborhood would be substantially altered, or whether adjoining properties would suffer a substantial detriment as a result of the variance. I think we all kind of agreed that would not happen, like that due to the size of the property and how far setback it is from the road, and you can barely see the property anyway. I wouldn't say there is no substantial changes to the character of the neighborhood.
Yes, I would agree with that. And I guess I stumbled over this one, Seth, because this is a negative. The other ones were looked as positive. So what we're doing in this particular case is we're agreeing to the good stuff. And in this case, we're putting down a disagreement, on our findings because it's a good thing.
I mean, that is correct.
Sorry for the convolution, but that's.
If you're disagreeing with that statement, you're saying that the neighborhood is not substantially altered by this. And I think the argument is that is the case. I mean, it is an agricultural area. And we're talking about an agricultural building.
Yeah, I think in this case, if we disagree with this, it's a positive.
Correct.
It just seemed intuitively a stumble block to me. Okay, we're good then. I'll disagree with that then too.
Okay, we'll disagree with that. Okay. Number 4, the variance would adversely affect the delivery of government services like water, sewer, garbage. I think I disagree on that. There's nothing that would, again, I think this is one of those where we disagree, but that it's a good thing that we disagree that it doesn't affect these. Any other comments?
True.
Okay, number 5. The property owner purchased the property with knowledge of the zoning restriction. And I think that's where the comment came in, asking when the property was purchased in 2009. Maybe she probably didn't have complete knowledge because she hadn't planned on building this arena at the time. So I'm not sure how to handle this one, if we agree or disagree on this.
I think we disagree
think
to
we
this,
disagree.
but again, it's good to disagree.
I agree with that.
Not confusing. Okay, but yes, we disagree on that one, but it's a good thing. Okay. Okay, number 6, the property owner's predicament feasibly can be obviated through, I had to look that word up, through some method other than a variance. And again, I disagree with this because there was no way she could feasibly do something else without having to request a variance to make this work for her.
Disagree.
Yeah, I correct.
I think I'm going to disagree with you guys, my nature, I guess, because she does have the capability. She doesn't have the capability to do it as much as she wants, which, okay, that kind of stinks. But, I mean, this is going to kind of segue into point 7, where we grant the variance, we're going to allow her to enjoy the spirit and nature of her property more. So I think I'm going to disagree with you guys on point 6, but that doesn't matter because it's going to be overcome by point 7. To convolute things a little bit more for you, Mr. Engineer.
See, guys, I told you.
Because, so to explain, granting the variance or not granting the variance does not allow her to not ride the horse on the property in the smaller arena, or there are facilities that she could utilize other places. But granting the variance does allow her to do it more often on her property within her own means and control, which I think is a benefit that all property owners should have, as well as animal owners, to enjoy their animals in the method that they seem most appropriate. So that's kind of why I'm disagreeing with the point of number 6, that she can't feasibly enjoy or obviate through some other method if the variance is not granted.
I see what you're saying. I still disagree on it, but. Okay. Are we mostly in agreement to disagree on that one? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, number 7, and this is where we're good. So, the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would be observed and substantial justice done by granting the variance. And I believe we are all, from what I've heard in the discussion, we would agree on this one, that by granting this variance, we are upholding the spirit and intent behind enjoying your property and being able to, having it be usable for your needs and your wants. And okay, so we agree on number 7.
I agree with that.
Okay, and I think number 8 is just more of if there's any additional information to discuss, because there are any other relevant factors that may assist the board in weighing and balancing the public and private benefits and harms to determine if the requested relief is necessary. This is an agree or disagree, but I feel like this is more of we input our own comments. Staff, do you have any I don't know if this doesn't seem like an agree or disagree statement, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think generally you're always going to agree with this one, if you're leaning toward supporting it. I think you would disagree if you were leaning toward not supporting it. I think Mr. had some comments during the discussion, and others did, and that would be the kind of thing that you would add into the the lines for that one.
I would be comfortable agreeing with this statement based on the location and size of the property. Reduces the harm and adds to the benefit.
I would agree with that statement. Anybody else?
Yes.
Agree. I guess people are waiting for me.
So I guess then the last part is based on the application, on the above, the application meets or does not meet the standard for variance. Listen to
And there are all things considered, does it meet the standard of practical difficulty?
okay.
I think the application does meet the standards needed for the variance.
Agree.
So I will say with my 2 dissenting comments earlier, but I do agree that the application overall does meet the standard for variance as listed in chapter 1141.07.
Yep, and I would agree.
Agree.
Okay, so we'll say that it meets. So at this point, do I hear any motion on this variance?
I move we accept the variance as proposed, fee 2103 at 7140 Crestway.
I'll second.
Do we want to do a roll call when we're actually voting on?
Mr. McGinnis?
Yes.
Ms. Weeks?
Yes.
Mr. Goit?
Yes.
Ms. Hunter?
Yes.
And Ms. Byers?
Yes.
Okay, congratulations. Your variance has been requested, has been granted. Again, we apologize for that taking so long. That was the first time through those questions. So hopefully these last 2 won't be quite so involved. Okay, so we'll go on to the second variance request of the evening. Okay, so the second Second case is VAR 21-04 at parcel M600300020019, northwest corner of Phillipsburg Union and Old Mill Roads. And the applicant is Michael Podrosky. I apologize if I butchered that. Okay, and the request for accessory structure variances at the northwest corner of Phillipsburg Union and Old Mill Road, parcel ID M600300020019. The applicant is proposing to construct a pole barn, which requires a variance for size. The request was made by Michael Podrosky, the property owner. And I'll turn over to staff.
Okay, and the first part here will be duplicative, but the applicant is proposing to build a 2,400 square foot pole barn on the 19-acre parcel they own at the northwest corner of Phillipsburg Union Road and Old Mill Road. The detached accessory structure variance required is for size of structure. Next slide. Just again, to give you an idea of the surrounding area, their property is sort of in the center by the red dashed line to the left of that. Next slide. Zooming in, that's the 19-acre parcel, a portion of which is currently farmed, the majority of which is still a wooded area. Next slide. And this is the plot plan provided by the applicant, so you can kind of see where on the property, and it would be in the area that's currently farmed, where the pole barn is proposed. Next slide. So again, it's the size is 2,400 square feet. The code maximum is 1,800 square feet, as we learned in the last application. I put a figure here for your consideration. It will occupy 0.2% of the lot area. The pole barn proposed is to house agricultural and outdoor equipment and accessories necessary for maintaining the property. And the applicant is proposing to improve the existing woods to allow his family to enjoy it for camping, trail hiking, bird animal watching, and producing maple syrup, and to store materials as the applicant is planning to build his their primary residence in 2022. Next slide. This is just the inspirational image I received from the applicant of the type of pole barn that he would propose. And after consideration of the application, staff would recommend approval of the proposed barn given the following facts. The proposed structure will be located on the applicant's 19-acre parcel and will serve as personal storage of equipment and materials to help the applicant improve the land and prepare the building for the residents. Proposed pole barn far exceeds the setback requirements for a principal structure in the RCD2, again, Rural Conservation District 2, 767 feet from the south property line, which is Phillipsburg Union Road, 280 feet from the east property line, which is Old Mill Road, 200 feet from the neighboring north property line, 520 feet from the west property line. And the required detached accessory structure setback from property lines in the RCD2 is 20 feet. With that, happy to answer any questions you might have.
Seth, I've got one question and clarification, really, I guess. Again, when we're looking at this, you're talking about an accessory structure can only be built in a property with a primary structure, but according to section 112102C1, and you've got 6 in Roman listed, it should be 5, I think, according to our code. So V instead of VI.
Okay.
Seth, I have a couple of questions for staff. First one is the reference that Bob just cited. I believe that you had pointed out in the paperwork we received with the exception of agricultural properties which are exempt from this standard. Can you give me the definition for agricultural properties?
So what I classify as an agricultural property are those properties zoned RCD1 and RCD2. Those are our, I guess, what used to be agriculturally zoned properties, and now we're calling them rural conservation. So that's how I would classify it.
Okay. So with that being said, couple follow-on questions.
Mm-hmm.
Have we removed the necessary discussion that has to happen with, sorry, let me back this up. The 7 acres that are being farmed, does that get classified as prime farmland or anything like that? And do we need to have that discussion at this time, considering that it looks like the proposed structure is going to be built on the farmland?
The previous code did have, in order to build a residence on a property zoned A agriculture, did have some requirements related to prime farmland versus non-prime farmland. That has been removed in the new code.
Yeah, I saw that it had been, I just couldn't see if there was a place for a requirement to have that discussion elsewhere, or things like that. So I just wanted to make sure we weren't missing some piece to the puzzle.
Right.
And then second, I guess to kind of follow up with the first, this is a 19 acre parcel, 12 of it being wooded, 7 of it being the farmland.
Mhm.
So we are looking at it as a whole and going to categorize that as agricultural because of the farmland is only 7 acres. I mean, I guess I'm kind of looking for the explanation on the split there.
For me, it's the zoning district. I think you look at the list of permitted and conditional uses. Residence is a permitted use, but much of it is agriculturally based. But now it's much easier to have a residence on an agricultural parcel.
Okay, perfect. That was kind of my read with everything, but I just wanted to make sure I was reading it right, because I know it has somewhat changed from the previous code. So I just wanted to understand the thought process to make sure that I was approaching this from the correct thought process, because if we had been going off with the old code and the old thought, it'd be a very different outcome now. So I just wanted to make sure that I understood the intent of the new code as I evaluated this one.
Yeah, I
Thank
think
you,
you
Seth.
got it. Yep,
I appreciate that.
absolutely.
This might be kind of reiterate, but I wanted to double check also on, so we're saying it, because this is agricultural property or RCD, 2 or whatever it's,
Mhm.
that it's, it is okay to put this on the property without there being the primary residency at this time. Okay.
That's correct.
So we're okay with that at
Yep.
this point? Okay.
Yep.
So there's no issues there. So the issue is only the size?
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, any other questions from the board? Okay, thanks, Seth. And do we have the applicant that would like to come up and speak? And just state your name and your address.
Michael Podrosky, 355 Binns Boulevard, Columbus, Ohio. And my wife saw the property about a year ago, and she made a pretty quick move on it. So I wasn't able to understand all the variances or the codes or anything like that. And 2400 came to mind because my uncle has about the same type of acreage, and he has 2,400 acre pole barn, and it seemed to fit his needs really well, and I thought it'd fit mine. So and then I find out later that, oh, it's 600 feet, and well, might as well go through the process, right? For $200 extra and seeing you all, I think it might be worth it. So that's why I'm here today. But yeah, we're really excited. Both my wife and I grew up in the country, in the middle of nowhere, and we have 2 young children, 7 and 3. And we're really looking forward to them enjoying what we enjoyed growing up. And her parents are about 15 minutes away, so they also live in the country. So it'll be a nice atmosphere to be in. We're ready to get out of the city. We're ready for peace and quiet, and we're ready to move back to the country.
I have a quick question. Where, in relation to where this pole barn is going to be, where do you think the primary residencies will be situated? Do you have an idea, any ideas on that yet?
Yeah, I think it's going to be slightly to the south of where the pole barn is proposed. What we're trying to do is, I spoke with the farmer who's currently farming it. We had a really good discussion, and I want to have a further discussion with him because I want to maintain as much farmland as possible so he can be incentivized to continue farming it. And I spoke with the gentleman to the north, Brian. I got to know him fairly well. There was a lot of fallen trees into the field that the farmer was having problems with, so I took care of that before this last harvest. And I got to know Brian very well, and I was explaining to him what our thoughts were and what we wanted to do, and he didn't have any objections. I said, I like to have the house here, the pole barn here. I try to keep it away from your property line as best as I can, because obviously in the country, you don't really want to be living right next to somebody, so. But we had a really good conversation, and I didn't hear any objections from him, so.
Quick question for you.
Sure.
Do you have you've probably done some preliminary planning then for your house, and have you done, test well? Are you going to be doing well water? And do you have an idea about septic and leach beds? And the only reason I'm asking that is because if we go ahead and we approve this, you put the barn up there, it'd be rough if the only, good water would be right in the middle of your barn there.
We had a professional come out and run some tests and to understand where the where well water could be and what the best angle for it. And I don't have it with me, but he believes that it's going to be from the south, probably roughly 50 feet off of Phillipsburg Union and going at a diagonal to roughly, I'd say 280 some feet to the right to Old Mill. So my point is he didn't think it was going to be an issue. And I took that into consideration too, of where the location of the pole barn would be.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, do we have a motion to open it to public comment?
I move.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak for or against this application? Please come on up, state your name and your address.
Good evening. My name is Omar Bergman. I live in Iron Gate Platte, but my property is across the street at 3650 Phillipsburg Union Road. And we're pretty much doing the same thing about a year in advance of what they're doing. In the middle of building a house, we built a small pole barn. We only have 16 acres, so we don't need as much. It's great that they're wanting to do what they're going to do. I've never met them before, but this land can be farmed. We're still farming our land, other than right around the house. It really makes for a nice place to be. We look for years to find a property, and by the way, there is city water and sewer out of Phillipsburg Road, so that's one reason we purchased the land we're at. So I'm all in favor, my wife included, so good luck.
Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, any other comments? Okay, motion to close public comments?
Motion.
I'll second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, let's see. Any other, anything else the board wants to discuss, or? Oh, yeah, that's right, Seth, outside comment.
I received a few calls from neighbors in the area, but no official letters or anything of that nature.
The nature of the calls that were received?
Initially concerned, I sent applications and materials to them, and I didn't hear any more after that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, any discussion between board members on this? Move on to the findings of fact. Okay, so we'll go through the finding of facts for this variance request. And the first one is the property in question will yield a reasonable return or whether there can be any beneficial use of the property without a variance. Comments?
To me, this is pre-positioning again, development of the land, if you will, by establishing a pole barn for use to be able to store equipment to clear, prior to the construction of the primary residence, with the full intent of the applicant to be moving in there in the future. And we've heard testimony from a neighbor who's done exactly that same thing, so that tends to support the fact that this happens. So I would agree that it's a reasonable return.
I agree with that. Anybody else?
I agree.
Okay, I agree. Number 2, the variance is substantial.
Well, in this case, it's a big first step, again, and it's going to be a building that's going to be there on the property. There's a lot of work still to be done, but it's definitely a step in the right direction, and will help the applicant as they go through development of their primary residence and the property in the future.
I would agree with all that. Anybody else? Do we agree that it's a substantial item? Again, this is objective.
Agree.
So I think in this instance, wouldn't we disagree, saying the variance is substantial, we would disagree? I mean, that's the way we would read this. Yeah.
I would
However, it's
say
positive.
based on your comments, I think you would disagree in this case.
It's a positive disagreement.
Okay, so this one is Gets a look at this one. Okay, number 3, the essential character of the neighborhood would be substantially altered, or whether adjoining properties would suffer a substantial detriment as a result of the variance. I think this is again a disagree, but it is positive.
Disagree.
I disagree with that too, because the area that they're in, these type of structures are out there anyway. It's not going to be substantially altering the neighborhood, and adjoining properties would not suffer because adjoining properties have the same type of outbuilding. We're just looking for something that's got a little bit more square footage, which on the size of this lot is pretty inconsequential.
I would agree with that, especially, 19 acres and adding a little extra square footage doesn't seem out of question. Okay. Okay, number 4. The variance would adversely affect the delivery of government services, water, sewer, garbage, and I believe we had that discussion already, so we disagree that it would not, we disagree with this statement.
Disagree.
Right.
So it's good. The property owner, number 5, the property owner purchased the property with knowledge of the zoning restriction. I would disagree, as he stated he didn't realize what they were, which is fine, so now we know. Anything else to add on that? Okay, number 6, the property owner's predicament feasibly can be obviated through some method other than a variance.
I'm not sure how.
I think we would agree with this because in theory, he could build a smaller pole barn. But again, it doesn't have to affect the outcome of our decision here today.
I agree with
I
that
agree with that.
statement.
I agree too, yep. Okay, number 7, the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would be observed and substantial justice done by granting the variance. And I would agree with that.
I agree.
Agree.
Number 8, there are any other relevant factors that may assist the board in weighing and balancing the public and private benefits and harms to determine if the requested relief is necessary. It seems like we're all leaning towards that. I would say we agree on that, but any other comments?
I have a comment. This one's more for Seth. to me, this reads weird. Almost seems like it should be reading, are there any other relevant factors? And kind of be like a question where we would put it down. That's just,
An answer yes or no.
yeah. Because it just reads weird to me. But that's, if Bob gets one, I get one, so.
Yeah, I agree with you, but that is how it's written in the code, but I think you're kind of flipping the words is the intention of it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we can't change the code. Nope. So, we'll go with it. Okay. So based on the above application, I would say that it meets the standard for variance, practical difficulty, listed in chapter 1141.07A4 of the City of Clayton Planning and Zoning Code. Anybody else agree with that?
I agree.
Agree.
I agree.
Okay, do I hear a motion on this variance?
I move we approve variance VAR 21, what is this for?
I'll second.
Okay, let's go through roll call.
Mr. McGinnis?
Yes.
Ms. Weeks?
Yes.
Mr. Boyd?
Yes.
Ms. Hunter?
Yes.
And Ms. Byers?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Your variance has been requested, Mr. Podrowski. I'm so sorry, I keep messing that up. Congratulations. Okay, we have one more to go through here. Okay, so our third and final case this evening is case number VAR 21-05 at 4848 Paisemont Avenue, but the applicant is Mary Sonia Conti. And the request is for an accessory structure variance at 4848 Paisemont Avenue. The applicant is proposing to construct a 14 by 20 foot shed, which requires a variance for size. The request was made by Mary Sonia Conti, the applicant. And staff, go ahead.
Great, thank you. Here again, there's a picture of 4848 Paisemont Avenue. The applicant is proposing to build a 280 square foot storage shed to be located behind the existing detached garage of about the same size. The detached accessory structure variance is required for size. Next slide. This is surrounding neighborhood, and she's kind of on the north row of houses, kind of in the middle of that picture. Next slide. And there's a close-up view, and that's from the county's GIS imagery. It's a couple years old. Next slide. And this is the applicant's plot plan, the drawing of what's proposed. As you can see in blue is the existing detached garage, kind of just at the end of the driveway, and then behind in red is the proposed shed. Next slide. The area of the proposed shed is, again, 280 square feet. The code allows up to 2 detached accessory structures, only one of which can be over 200 square feet in area. And as I mentioned, the existing detached garage is approximately 280 square feet. Therefore, this would be a second one that's over 200 square feet and requires a variance for the size. The applicant has said the shed will be used to store artwork and supplies and provide some space for a small art studio for the applicant. Next slide. After review and consideration of the application and the facts of the case, I would recommend approval of the proposed shed. With the following facts, the proposed shed will meet the required setbacks for accessory structure and will be shorter than the primary residence. And according to the applicant, she has removed all of the structures and items that were sitting in the backyard that are visible in the county's imagery from, again, 2 years ago. So the proposed shed would be the second of 2 detached accessory structures permitted by the code. And with that, I'm happy to answer any initial questions you might have.
I have a question. So if the garage would be an attached garage, this would only be her first accessory structure?
That's correct. Only one is allowed to be over 200, so I'm not sure if we would have the variance. I know the old code referred to garages. I'm not sure that, I'm trying to remember if the new code does. I'd have to go back and check that real quick, but no, that's correct. That would be the only detached structure on the
Okay,
property.
so the issue, yeah, okay, so the issue is that this is the second detached, so, that's why it would be-
And they're both larger than 200 square feet.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions from the board at this time? Okay, thanks. Would the applicant like to come up and speak? If there's anything you'd like to add? If there is, come on up to this, yep. Just state your name for us and your address.
Name is Mary Sonia Conti. I go by Sonia. I'm an artist. Heaven help y'all. The home that I moved into was a downsize, and I had always told everyone, I don't care what I've got, just don't take my art, don't take my materials, and don't take my books. That's what this is going to be for. And I need to return to the art. I found out that my car doesn't fit in the garage. So, with what I have in it, between where I've had the other materials put and what is in my existing garage, I find I need the same size. Now everyone goes, that's too much space. But it's not when you start throwing paint. And everything that is involved in that, and then you bring grandchildren over, and they start playing. I hope that you consider what has been done to the property up to this point in the year that I've been there. And I'm all about nature, and there's plenty of blooms. That's all.
Thanks. Anybody from the board have questions for the applicant at this time?
Sonia, I just have one question. Have you spoken with your neighbors about building the second
Yes, the
structure?
only one I wasn't able to get a hold of was the gal that lives behind me that has a deck, and usually she comes out to let the dog out, and I keep waiting, because I don't want to walk over on Old Salem Road. There's not really a sidewalk over there, so I
And-
thought for sure I'd get a hold of her, but I did get a hold of everyone around me.
And they were all okay with the structure being
Yes,
built?
yes.
Perfect. Thank you for reaching out to
The
your
only
neighbors.
one, yeah, the only one that had hesitated, it spoke to Seth, and she's the one that was storing the majority of my artwork and canvases. And I'm quite sure she's more than happy to approve to get her space back.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that.
Mhm.
Thank you so much. Okay, anybody move to open this to public comments?
Move to open for public comment?
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, is there anybody from the public who would like to speak in favor or against this application tonight? Okay, Seth, is there anything from comments you've received?
Yes, I spoke with the resident that Sonia talked about, Judy Smith. We talked, I shared the application and the materials. Got an email from her today that said she is in support of it after reviewing everything.
Great, thank you.
And have all the neighbors been notified too?
All within 300 feet of her property, and I've not heard from anyone else other than Ms. Smith.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Gorman. Okay, I guess we'll anybody move to close to public comments?
I move to close the public comment portion.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Discussion among board members. Any other further comments, questions? Okay, let's go finding of facts. Okay, for this variance, we'll start with number 1. The property in question will yield a reasonable return, or whether there can be any beneficial use of the property without a variance. Comments?
I think adding the second shed storage would be very appealing to not only Sonia, but subsequent buyers or things like that, because you can never have enough storage space.
I would agree with that.
I would agree with that, too.
Yes.
Okay, number 2, the variance is substantial.
Disagree with that. I don't think the variance is substantial in this portion. We are just asking for another structure that is the equivalent in size of the already existing structure. So the variance, I don't feel is substantial in this instance.
I would agree. It's only 80 square feet above the minimum, or the maximum, I mean, so.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, number 3. The essential character of the neighborhood would be substantially altered, or whether adjoining properties would suffer a substantial detriment as a result of the variance. I disagree, especially since it sounds like other neighbors have weighed in and they are okay with building this structure there.
I disagree too.
So disagree as a positive. Okay, number 4, the variance would adversely affect the delivery of government services, water, sewer, garbage. Disagree.
Disagree.
Disagree, but let me, Seth, I noticed that in the other corner, there's cable. Have we checked for easements back there? Is there any problem with utility access through that area? Garage.
Undoubtedly, there are easements on that property, but I looked up the plat, which is a very, very old plat, and no easements are drawn on the plat. But I'm sure that the utilities have assumed them.
Okay. And typically, in a plant like that, I think the utilities would be across and parallel the streets in a lot of ways, especially if there's something, and then they would have adjoining going into the houses. And of course, they'd have to dial 411 to do any construction out there anyway. Okay, thank you.
I think to address your comment, Bob, though, given the plan and the layout with the map, even if there is an easement, I don't think they would be encroaching on it. And I think there's more than enough room for utility or service individuals to get through. So I don't think an easement is an issue, but that's just.
Totally agree. I just
Yeah.
wanted to get it on the record.
No, that's good, because I forgot about it too.
Okay. Number 5, the property owner purchased the property with knowledge of the zoning restriction. Disagree.
Disagree.
Yeah.
Disagree.
It's okay. Number 6, the property owner's predicament feasibly can be obviated through some method other than a variance. I mean, I think it's just similar to when we've done before, where we agree because, I mean, she could make a smaller shed, but that doesn't preclude us from agreeing to grant the variance. So we would agree that on number 6. Okay, number 7, the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would be observed and substantial justice done by granting the variance. I would agree.
Yes.
Okay, number 8, there are any other relevant factors that may assist the board in weighing and balancing the public and private benefits and harms to determine if the requested relief is necessary. I agree. Any further comments though on that one?
I think in this case that we're good.
I don't think we need any further relevant factors on this one. I mean, yeah, slam dunk.
Okay. Okay, so based on the above application, I believe that it meets the standard for variance. Anybody else agree or disagree with that?
Agree.
Okay, so do I hear a motion on this?
I move we approve variance 21-05.
Second.
Okay, can we go through roll call?
Mr. McGinnis?
Yes.
Ms. Weeks?
Yes.
Mr. Goit?
Yes.
Ms. Hunter?
Yes.
And Ms. Byers?
Yes.
Okay, congratulations, Ms. County. Enjoy your new shed. Okay, so that takes care of all of the cases for this evening. Mr. Dorman, do we have anything coming up for our next meeting? Anything on that?
No applications yet, but I will keep you posted.
Okay, that sounds good. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.